Hey guys, I'm Ubiru and welcome back to World of Warships. Today we'll be looking at the premium Tier 7 American cruiser, the USS Atlanta. Now the Atlanta is only one of 3 premium ships for the Americans available in the game at the moment. There's the USS Sims, there's the Albany at Tier 2, and there's the Atlanta. Now the Atlanta is a unique ship in that it has torpedoes at Tier 7. The Tier 4 and Tier 5 American cruisers down their tier line have torpedoes, and then from Tier 6 onwards they have no torpedoes and a large increase in firepower. This ship, however, has low caliber guns, lots and lots of them, and torpedoes. So this is a very unique ship and a very good ship. Okay, so appearance-wise, this ship looks very similar to the Pensacola and the New Orleans, the very modern-looking American cruisers in the game. So this is the Atlanta, and this is the Pensacola. So as you can see, they look very similar. They have a different caliber gun, but other than that, they're pretty much the same. And the New Orleans. That's the New Orleans, and this is the Atlanta. So the same as the other American cruisers in the game, the Atlanta looks very modern. Okay, so let's look at the main stats of the USS Atlanta. So the first stat is survivability, and that's 39 out of 100. So that's not a great score for a cruiser at this tier, but it's not the worst, but it's not the best. So we have here 27,500 health and up to 89mm of armour. In comparison to the Pensacola, which is also at tier 7, it has slightly less health and slightly more armour, but anything less than 100mm of armour at this tier is quite bad. It's not like the New Orleans, which has nearly double the Pensacola's armour. The Atlanta, it's not a face-hugging ship. You won't like to get this within close proximity of your enemy, otherwise you will die quickly, similar to how the Kitakami dies. This ship can very easily be destroyed when it's near the bigger ships, like the battleships or the very heavy cruisers. So the Citadel is 13 to 89mm, the forward and after ends are 6 to 51mm, the gun casemate is 6 to 13mm, and the armoured deck is 32mm. Now something I have noticed with the armour of this ship is, first things first, this ship has many guns pretty much everywhere on the ship. The problem with the guns, however, is that they're very easy to destroy. As soon as anyone gets a penetrating hit on one of your guns, it gets knocked out and destroyed. So when one of your guns gets destroyed, it's impossible to get that gun working again in that battle. You're one gun less for the entire duration of the match. The thing you can do really to lessen the amount of guns being destroyed is to stay at your max distance, which in this ship isn't a lot, it's only 11.1 kilometers. So the next stat is artillery firepower. So I did just mention about the guns. There are loads and loads on this ship, it's pretty much spread everywhere. So this ship is one of the ships with the most guns in the game at the moment. It has 3 turrets at the front with 2 barreled guns each, so we have 6 at the front, 6 guns, 6 at the back, and 1 on the left and 1 on the right. So that is a huge amount of guns. These guns turn very fast, they have a very high DPM. Unfortunately though, these guns aren't a very high caliber, so they haven't got a very high maximum damage. But when you're firing all of them at the same time, over and over again, you can do a huge amount of damage on the enemy. So the caliber of these guns is 127mm. The rate of fire is 12.0 rounds per minute, which is one of the highest in the game. That is fantastic. They turn incredibly quickly as well, 7.2 seconds. The dispersion is only 98 meters. They're incredibly accurate. The high explosive maximum damage is 1,000, just over 1,000, 1,070. The AP is 2,370. The bad part about these guns, however, is the maximum range, which is only 11.1 kilometers. Now at tier 7, most ships have in excess of 14-16 kilometers max distance with their guns, with cruisers, and with battleships in excess of 20 kilometers. So despite the amazing DPM of this ship, it is seriously disadvantaged in having only 11.1 kilometers on its guns. You can't engage enemies in the open sea, they'll fire at you and you will die with your weakish armor and your low amount of health. You can very easily be destroyed by the tier 6 to tier 10 guns, which are 203mm guns. When they penetrate you, they will do a substantial amount of damage. You can take serious damage if you're not careful where you put this ship. I like pushing around rocks, not engaging frontally. Push the enemy to your max distance at all times if possible. Occasionally you can get within close distance of destroyers and they rush towards you, and you can very easily take them out with your guns. Another problem with these guns really is the massive firing arc of these guns. Well, you see where the guns are positioned there in a very efficient manner. We have 3 at the front here and 3 at the back. The guns go up in stages, so the one at the very front is very low, the second one is a bit higher, and the third one is even higher still. That means you can fire at least 3 guns at all times in this ship, so that's a good thing. But the problem with this ship It's the huge firing arcs required to actually hit an enemy. You have to lead your shots exceptionally long in order to get any effective hits on the enemy ship. So that is a big problem with this ship. It seems as if the shell velocity isn't very high, and it just takes forever for the shells to actually hit the enemy. Now the third part about the ship is it's a very special ship. The same as the Tier 4 and the Tier 5 American cruisers. You have torpedoes, which is very nice. From Tier 6 onwards, the American cruisers don't, and the Japanese do. So this isn't too bad. We have 16 score for torpedoes. We have 4 torpedoes on each side, 533mm, so they're not the biggest, they're not 610, but they're not bad nonetheless. The maximum damage of these torpedoes is 16,600, which is quite nice for the 533mm torpedoes. And they are incredibly fast, going up to 65 knots in speed, which is very fast for a torpedo at this tier, and is probably pushing towards the fastest torpedoes in the game. The reload isn't too bad. You only have 98 seconds, which is alright for a cruiser. The turn time again is quite fast, 7.2 seconds, similar to the guns. A disadvantage, and the worst part about the torpedoes in this ship, is the maximum range, and that's only 4.5 kilometers. So with this ship, the torpedoes are primarily an emergency weapon. You would use the torpedoes if you're within close proximity of enemy battleships, or even cruisers. So the maximum torpedo range of this ship is very poor. Same with most of the other American destroyers and the early cruisers, the range isn't too excessive, and this is the same thing. So they are very much an emergency weapon. And the next stat is anti-air capability. So as you would expect from Tier 6 onwards, everything gets a vast increase in anti-air capability with the increased planes, etc. This is no exception. You have 33 out of 100, that's not too bad. You can shoot down planes, you can be a fleet defender. You do have the ability which increases your anti-air capability for a short while, which is nice. But in comparison to the Pensacola, which is also at Tier 7, you are at a disadvantage. The Pensacola has 46, and you only have 33. So it's not the best anti-air capability. You can shoot down planes, but it's not bad. And the next stat is maneuverability. So 61 out of 100. This doesn't go to a sluggish top speed. It's 33 knots, which isn't too bad. The rudder shift time is 11 seconds. Again, it's not the best, but it's not bad. But however, the turning circle radius is 830 meters. This means that this ship turns around very, very slowly. The Pensacola at Tier 7 has a better overall maneuverability. It has the same top speed. It has a slightly better turning circle radius at 800 meters and a better rudder shift time of 9.1 seconds. So far, the Atlanta isn't very good in comparison to the Pensacola, with the exception that the Atlanta has torpedoes and the Pensacola does not. The Pensacola has the bigger guns, but the Atlanta, when it's within close proximity, the Atlanta can do some serious damage with its AP. If you lead them far enough, in my opinion, one-on-one with the Atlanta and the Pensacola, the Atlanta can win if you get your shots accurately on the weak parts of the Pensacola. The Pensacola isn't particularly well armoured, and you can kill it off very quickly. It doesn't matter what caliber guns you have, you can penetrate the Pensacola. It has very weak armour, and you can kill it in this thing. So in my opinion, the Atlanta is better than the Pensacola in one-on-one, just based on the overall DPM of the Atlanta. And the last stat of the Atlanta is concealment. So the Atlanta is the only stat better than the Pensacola is the concealment, 65, which isn't bad. You have 11 kilometers surface detectability range. Your guns go at 11.1, so your guns can fire just over that, and the air detectability range is 6.4 kilometers, so you can stay hidden from enemy planes for a while. In comparison to the Pensacola has 40, so the Pensacola is a bigger target, it can be spotted quicker. So the Atlanta is definitely more of a stealthy target than the Pensacola. Of course, in my opinion, it is best to stay as stealthy as possible in the Atlanta because your gun range is so small. Go near rocks, try and get the enemy to come to you, and then just empty rounds and rounds into the enemy as quickly as you can. Okay, so let's look at the modules of the ship. Again, this is a premium ship, so with all premium ships you get some advantages and disadvantages in comparison to the tier line. In comparison to the Pensacola, it has better armor, very slightly better armor, it has worse health, it has better DPM, it has a worse caliber gun, it has a worse firing range, but it has torpedoes. So there are no upgrades, as with all premium ships in the game, but I have chosen some credit bought upgrades. So the first one I've chosen here is the main battery modification one. You have many guns spread on this ship, 3 at the front, 3 at the back, and 2 on the sides. So you want to have as many of those guns up as possible. So this mod has minus 20% chance of magazine detonation, minus 20% chance of critical damage to main batteries, which is very necessary in my opinion, and minus 20% main battery repair time. You can get your guns damaged as well as destroyed, but when your guns are damaged, this does reduce that by 20% repair time. The next mod I've chosen is the Gunfire Control System Mod 1, which I choose with all my ships with high DPM or low amounts of guns. It's just a fantastic upgrade. This ship has fantastic accuracy anyway, only having 98 meters dispersion. It definitely has one of the highest base accuracies in the game, but with this I'm increasing it further. With your very high rate of fire and your low damage, you want to have as many of those shells hitting the enemy as possible, and this increases that further. The third upgrade I've chosen here is the minus chance of flooding and minus chance of fire, the Damage Control System Mod 1. I've chosen this again just for the fire. The flooding, yeah, this thing is very sluggish turning around, as you saw with the maneuverability. It can be very hard to turn this thing around, and you can get hit by torpedoes. But at this tier, if you get hit by a tier 7 or above torpedo, you will be destroyed very quickly. So this mod is primarily for the minus 5% chance in fire. And the last mod I've chosen here is the Steering Gear Mod 2, which is a minus 20% rudder shift time. I did mention the maneuverability isn't very good in this ship. It's 11 seconds for the rudder shift time, and the circle radius is quite terrible, 830 meters. You want to decrease that further so you can turn this thing around as quickly as possible, avoid torpedoes, and kite the enemy as best you can. This is the USS Atlanta. It's a great ship in this game. It has a very high DPM. It is, however, quite weakly armoured. It doesn't have a huge amount of health. But when you get those guns on the enemy and you lead them correctly, you can do a huge amount of damage within a short space of time. 12 rounds per minute in this ship is a great thing. You can pretty much hold down your left mouse button and your guns fire one after the other continually over and over again. I didn't actually mention this, but this ship has a fantastic broadside. It has up to 7 turrets firing at the same time, which is 14 barrels, which is a huge amount of fire. You can't fire all your guns at the same time because of how the left and right guns are situated. 14 guns firing at the enemy from a broadside is a vast amount of firepower. This ship is truly something to be cautious of if it's within close range. So I've showed you guys the main aspects of the USS Atlanta. Let's have a look at some gameplay. Okay, so this is the USS Atlanta, the Tier 7 Premium American Cruiser. On New Dawn Domination Mode, we have quite a lot of Tier 6s in our team, a couple of Tier 5s. The enemy has the advantage in how many ships they have, but we have the advantage in a higher sort of overall tier. We have the standard ammunition types. With this ship, I always choose AP over HE, unless of course I'm against destroyers. Destroyers are very weakly armoured, and they can be very easily killed with high explosive rounds. So next to that we see the torpedoes, and the torpedoes on this ship have around 90 seconds reload, but they are an emergency weapon. You don't really see the torpedoes used that often in this ship, unless enemies get within close distance of you. So of course this ship has the R button, which is the typical repair which every ship has. And the last ability here is the anti-air increase, which every cruiser from tier 6 above has. So unfortunately in this ship it doesn't have a scout plane like many of the other cruisers in the game. That can be a disadvantage in the latter stages of a match when you're trying to find enemy destroyers. But in the early stages of the match it really doesn't matter. Okay, so at this point I've noticed a lot of enemies approaching from the north. They're all going towards sea where I usually lurk. There's 2 Cleavens there with a Myogi and an Omaha fast approaching. So now I'm sort of nearing my distance of my guns. My guns are 11.1 and they're only 11.5, so I can get my guns firing on these guys very quickly. So I'm coming to a halt behind this rock here, getting ready to fire, and here comes the Cleveland. Gonna fire a couple of salvos, and you can see how far we actually have to lead these turrets to get any effective shots. So that time we led very far, and we got nearly a center hit for only 1,500 plus 1,000. These guns don't do an awful lot of damage, but the damage does accumulate, and if you keep pelting the enemy over and over again with a vast rate of fire, you can seriously damage the enemy. Another salvo coming in here. He's 10 kilometers away. He's coming to a halt behind the rock. A couple more enemies behind him. Here comes the salvo, and we finished him off. So 2,000 damage to finish him off. Here comes the Omaha and the Cleveland and the Gromyashki, and of course the Myogi. Now the enemy destroyer has put down a pot of smoke, so a lot of enemies are hidden, but they're still there. The Omaha is quickly approaching. The Omaha is very easy to kill if you get a center hit in the Citadel. A hit on the Citadel with these guns can do a serious amount of damage. There we are, 1 Citadel hit. And you can see the rate of fire of these guns. I'm just firing over and over again, continually clicking the left mouse button, and the guns don't stop. Yes, they don't do a huge amount of damage, but the damage does accumulate, and after a while, you can end up with a massive tally of damage. So So the smoke is still there, the Grumyashki's there with the enemy Cleveland, Miyogi as well. We're going to fire one salvo at the Grumyashki, and the Omaha's still there. We're going to fire through the smoke. He's disappeared for now, but we're going to fire anyway. The Cleveland's to the left. Continue firing at this Omaha, try and finish him off, lead these shots correctly. He's not very far, only just less than 8 kilometers. Another salvo going in now. Again, not a lot of damage, but 9 hits. So as you can see, the hit tally does get very high very quickly. Firing again, full broadsides, 7 guns. None of our guns have been knocked out yet. In they go. Nice hit. 2,000 health left. 1,000 health left. 7.5 kilometers away. Ah, we missed that salvo. Another one. Another salvo coming in. And we finished him off. So with these guns, because there's no limit to ammunition at the moment, you can fire over and over again as much as you want. So there's the Miyogi. He has 9,000 health left. All my allies to my left are firing at him from every angle. We're firing at him too, and he got blown away by a allied battleship. So as quick as that, the enemy is now down to less than half of their team. A very good show so far, and now we're 12 kilometers away from the other Miyogi, which is sort of saw what happened to his allies and has backed off quite cautiously. Now the Grumyashki is next to me, and it's quite a shame to say that the Grumyashki has a further firing range than this ship. You would expect a cruiser to have a much better than a destroyer firing range, but the Grumyashki has a fantastic firing range. But now he's within range, we're going to fire a couple of broadsides at the Miyogi. With this ship, when you fire at battleships, you can just fire over and over again, small amounts of damage, lots and lots of times. Of course, that accumulates to a vast amount of damage, hopefully at the end of battle. So we haven't come to a position where we need to use our torpedoes. They are very much an emergency weapon. And in this match, it doesn't seem likely that we will. I saw that this guy's coming in very fast, and he has got his guns on me soon. So I'm turning very sharply left here to hopefully avoid his incoming fire. Firing again. Most of my guns aren't active. I'm turning the ship in a manner so that the guns do become active. He just fired at me again, and he knocked out my my steering gear and one of my guns, but I managed to fix it. This guy only has 8,000 health left. My allies are helping. Another salvo going in. These are all AP rounds, so they are doing little damage. He got hit by a torpedo, and we finished him off. So at this point, we have 3 kills. Not bad. 112 hits. Yes, they're not a huge amount of damage, but they're all hits nonetheless. 2 citadel hits, 1 plane shot down, and 1 defending of the base. So now that we've captured the C, heading towards B, we still have an advantage here in how many ships we have in comparison to the enemy. The enemy, however, has more battleships. So now we switch to high explosive. We saw a destroyer incoming, and of course they're very susceptible to high explosive damage because they have very little armor. He's only 6 kilometers away, but now I need to be very careful about incoming torpedoes. All destroyers in the game have very good torpedoes. This guy seems to be very cautious of my shots. This guy's zigzagging very quickly to avoid pretty much all my shells incoming. But doesn't matter, I have a huge rate of fire, just fire over and over again, hit him there, destroyed his gun, destroyed his engine. Now it seems he's just stalling in the water, and he'll soon be knocked out. It seems he's repaired actually, going to fire again. Just laying down these shots over and over again. Just hold down the left mouse button or double click, doesn't matter. Just keep going over and over again until you eventually finish off the enemy. This ship is so susceptible to battleships though, it can be a serious problem. At this point, you'll notice on the bottom left of my map that I see grounding coming, and that will become an issue. Now, with this ship, it's very easy because you have to lead your shots so far, much further than any other ship in the game, in my opinion. You're very narrow-sighted in this ship. You're focusing on the target. You have to lead your shots correctly in order to hit them. And then this ship, in this match, I somehow became beached because I wasn't looking where I was going. I ignored the warning, and I went straight into this wall. And of course, when you're sideways on to a wall, it's almost impossible to get out. And you see here, I'm sort of going back and forth. At this point in the match, I'm thinking, why didn't I think about where I was going? Of course, with any ship, any big ship, if you get caught side on, you're stuck and you can't move at all. Now, I think that's a bit of an issue with this game at the moment. You actually can't move once you're beached. Everyone's firing at me here thinking, oh, he's an open target. They're all within 11 kilometers. They're just firing at me over and over again. The Omaha's there, 9 kilometers away. Going to fire at shots anyway. Going to fire the Omaha again. We've got nearly 6,000 damage there. We know we're nearly 3,000 health. They knocked out one of our guns, but at this point it doesn't really matter, and we got knocked out. Now, with this ship, it's fantastic when you get the ship right, but it can get catastrophically wrong if you don't look where you're going. Because you have to lead your shots so far, I've noticed with me, I've noticed with other replays I've seen of other people, so easy to narrow sight and focus on the enemy ship, as opposed to where you're going, and things like this happen where you get beach side on and there's nothing you can do about it. Now there's 3 allies left, a Nagata, the Grumyashki and a carrier versus 5 enemy ships. So for a large portion of this map we were winning by quite a large margin, and the enemy has become very defensive around their A cap and B. and managed to take down most of our team. I was thinking about this after I played this map, whether or not if I didn't get beached, I would be able to save the match. I think that probably wouldn't be the case. There was quite a lot of enemy battleships left, and the Atlanta is terrible at fighting battleships. Yes, you can kill some battleships within close proximity with your torpedoes, but because of the main guns of the battleships, you do by no means want to get within close proximity of the battleship. So even if I survived this match, we still would have lost, which is a shame, honestly, because we were winning by such a large margin about halfway through this match. So we did quite well, but unfortunately it was a defeat. We got nearly 300,000 credits, we got 1,483 experience, 143 hits, 1 plane shot down, 2 critically damaged, 3 destroyed ships. We came on top of the team in terms of experience by about 70, so that's quite good. In terms of damage, we've got 43,000 damage with just AP and 5,000 damage with HE. So typical of all premium ships in this game, they have good parts and they have bad parts. With this ship, it has not very good armour, not very good max health. It has a very bad max range on guns. But the guns turn very quickly, and when you get a good firing arc on the enemy ship, you can do a substantial amount of damage. It's also very easy with this ship. Among all the ships I played in the game, it is the easiest ship, in my opinion, to narrow sight, focus on the ship, and where your guns are firing, as opposed to where you're driving. And unfortunately, in that replay I just had, I made that mistake, and it didn't work out. The Atlanta is a fantastic ship. It has a very good rate of fire. One of the best in the game, probably rivaling that of the Megami, the Tier 8, or soon to be Tier 8 Japanese cruiser. It's a good ship. It has its good parts and it has its bad parts. So this ship does cost 9,000 doubloons or gold, whatever you want to call it. So it is quite expensive. It's definitely one of the most expensive premium ships in the game, but it is definitely one of the best. Looking past the disadvantage of minimum distance on guns, it is a fantastic ship. In my opinion, I played a lot of premium ships in this game, and it's probably my third favourite after the USS Sims, then the Gremyashki, then the Atlanta. The Atlanta is a great ship. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.